I'd like to call to order the Hatfield Township Board of Commissioners regular meeting for May 25, 2022. Roll call.
President Zipfel.
Here.
Vice President Rogers.
Here.
Commissioner Andrus.
Here.
Commissioner Lees.
Here.
Commissioner Zimmerman.
Here.
I would like to ask our Township Manager, Mr. Bebro, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening.
Aye.
Remain standing just for a moment. We're going to have a moment of silence for the victims and families in Texas tragedy that occurred. So if you join. All right, is there a motion for approval of tonight's agenda?
So moved.
By Commissioner Lees, second by Vice President Rogers. All in favor of approving tonight's agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. We can move forward. Consent items. Is there a motion to move the consent items in your agenda into the record? Motion by Commissioner Andrus.
Second.
Second by Vice President Rogers. Those consent items are the Board of Commissioners regular meeting minutes of April 27, the Board of Commissioners workshop meeting minutes of May 11, the Treasurer's report of May, and the bills payable. Paid bills in the amount of $51,105.68, and unpaid bills in the amount of $504,815.85. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving those and putting them into the record, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those are. Okay, citizens' comments, folks. Any citizens' comments on agenda items? All right, not seeing anyone jump up. We have our, I'm not sure if this is not an annual, it's a 5-year annual stormwater management presentation. Mary Stover is here with us. Thank you for coming out, Mary. What do you call that? A
Centennial.
Centennial?
Pentennial.
Pentennial?
Pentennial, yeah.
Get me on that one. Mary is with CKS Engineers, and she is going to tell us about a stormwater management presentation, total maximum daily load, and pollution reduction plan. So thank you for coming out, Mary.
Sure. I'm here to talk about your MS4 permit, where MS4 stands for Municipal Storm Sewer, Separate Storm Sewer System. They make it difficult. I was here back in 2017 when the permit was originally required to be submitted for a permit period that was supposed to start in 2018. We've been going through a lot of processes with DEP, trying to get approvals, and then Hatfield joined it with some of the other municipalities in the area in the Skipback Creek watershed to try to get a multi-municipal group together. So all of that has kind of delayed this process, but I think we're ready at this point to have a permit issued by the DEP. So next slide, please. This is a federally mandated program. It's administered by the DEP. And just generally to talk about the MS4 requirements, I don't know how familiar everyone is, but the municipalities are required to educate the public regarding pollutants from stormwater, monitor the discharges from storm sewer systems, reduce pollutants to impaired streams, from construction activities and from municipal facilities and operations. And those are basically what they call the 6 minimum control measures. And they've been in place since about 2003. But this permit period, there's a new requirement for a pollution reduction plan and a total maximum daily load plan. And it depends on whether or not the creek in the municipality is impaired. And here in Hatfield, they consider both the Neshaminy and the Skipback Creeks impaired watersheds. In addition, during this permit period, there's a requirement for what they call pollution control measures for pathogens, because the Neshaminy Creek is impaired for pathogens. So that's going to just require some investigative work during the 5-year period. Next slide, please. So starting with the total maximum daily load requirements, in Hatfield, we have requirements for Skipback Creek watershed for reducing sediment by 17%. And then the Neshaminy Creek watershed. The TMDL there separates the requirements by sub-watershed, where there's 3 sub-watersheds in Hatfield, but only 2 of them have a TMDL requirement. One is what they consider Subbasin 1, which requires 16%, and Subbasin 2, which requires 56%. However, for the 5-year permit term that we're going to be given, we have to reduce at least 10%. So we don't have to get all the way up to the 56% in Subbasin 2 during this 5-year period. The next slide, please. So the pollution reduction plan requirements basically pick up things that weren't in the total maximum daily load plan that was prepared by EPA. So we are also required to reduce nutrients in the Neshaminy Creek, the overall watershed, and the Skipback Creek by 5%, which DEP allows. If you show you're doing the 10% reduction, then they count that as a 5% reduction for total phosphorus. So that's how we calculated it for this plan. So the next slide. I'm going to talk about the Skipback Creek watershed, the multi-municipal pollution reduction plan first. So if you go to the next slide, that's the cover of the report that's been prepared. It was prepared for Lower Providence, Skipback, Worcester, Talmenton, and Hatfield. And this is the report that we're looking to get accepted by Hatfield Township this evening, as well as the part for the Neshaminy Creek. But the next slide shows the Skipback Creek watershed. The municipalities involved are pretty much in the lower end. The Skipback, Worcester, and Lower Providence all at the bottom. And then Talmenton and Hatfield extend up the watershed. So it's a good portion of the watershed that's included in the plan. So the Joint Pollution Reduction Plan, it was originally started in 2017, and at that time there were 6 municipalities that were going to join together to try to do a joint plan. The modeling of the Skipback Creek was previously done by the engineer for Lower Gwinnett Township, so we basically built on that model. We found that they had reduced their pollutant loads by doing a new modeling rather than using what the EPA had done back in the early 2000s. So using the new model, the sediment load in Hatfield Township is 28% less than what was in the original study. So that in itself helps us reduce the amount of sediment that we're going to have to reduce in our plan. In 2018, the municipalities chose to proceed with this joint plan, and then in 2020, Lower Salford dropped out. So now we're only 5 municipalities, and we've been negotiating with the various municipalities and came up to an agreement for cost sharing late in 2021. Go to the next slide. The participating municipalities at this time, as I said, are Talmenton, Worcester, Hatfield, Skipback, and Lower Providence. The proposed plan has 13 best management practices, which are projects to reduce the pollutants throughout all 5 municipalities. It includes 4 alternate projects in the event that there's something that gets in the way of a project being completed. And one of these BMPs is currently located in Hatfield Township, which would be a water quality basin at or near the Penfield Middle School. So for the agreement, which is on the next slide, the agreement provides the management and cost distribution and pollutant reduction distribution for the participating municipalities. The sediment load from Hatfield Township is about 5.2% of the overall sediment load in Skipback Creek from these 5 municipalities. The cost distribution was determined using an estimate of the cost for each municipality to proceed on their own versus proceeding as a group. And using this method, the cost to Hatfield Township is calculated to be 9.73% of the total cost, and that's in the agreement. It's anticipated that as a group, we will be able to get better opportunities for funding, so hopefully the overall cost can be reduced to all of the municipalities. So that's, and I think later on your agenda tonight is hopefully approval of that agreement. The other 4 municipalities have already approved and signed the agreements. This is our last public meeting for this project.
We're the holdout at this point.
It's just timing. That's how it worked out.
That's okay. We're comfortable being on a little bit of a holdout. So.
All right, moving on to the Neshaminy Creek watershed. A little diagram on the next slide. As I said, they divided Neshaminy Creek into sub-watersheds. where two of them have a TMDL and the, actually Subbasin 4, which is the largest part of the township, does not have a TMDL requirement, but DEP's decided that it's impaired and we're going to have to do something anyhow. So if you look at the next slide, it shows the proposed BMPs. In Subbasin 1, which is along the sort of eastern side of the township, between Broad and Line Street, we've chosen to do stream restoration because there's not a lot of place to do BMPs in that area. And if we do 134 feet of stream restoration, linear feet of the stream, it can get us to that total 16% that's required in the TMDL, and then we should be good unless DEP changed their mind for the next permit period. Subbasin 2, we're also looking at stream restoration. Subbasin 2 is sort of the lower east, southeast corner of the township. And we're looking to do about 129 linear feet of stream restoration. That would also get us to the full 56% that's required. So those ones are actually not that bad. Subbasin 4 is a larger portion of the township. So for this one, we've looked at a significant amount of stream restoration, over 2,000 linear feet, and 3 basin conversions basically would be to naturalize existing detention basins. And then we've added credits for street sweeping, inlet cleaning, and tree planting to get us up to, and that's getting us up to the 10% because there's no overall requirement for that watershed. But since it's so large, there's so many more BMPs. Next slide just briefly shows where the 3 basins are that would be converted. One's near Sterling Road, the other one near Providence Lane, and the other one near Stratford Avenue Park were the 3 that were included. And they were included in the plan back in 2017, so that hasn't changed. The change in Neshaminy Creek, we had to update this because there was a BMP taking advantage of small projects that DEP decided after they put out the instructions that they were no longer going to accept. So we had to take that out and we replaced that with stream restoration. So the next slide basically is the next steps for this program. So both the multi-municipal plan for Skipback Creek and the Hatfield Township plan for Neshaminy Creek have been advertised for public comment. Public meetings for the Skipback are being held for each municipality, and as I mentioned, you guys are our last one. And everybody's considering approval of the PRP and the agreement. And this is also the public meeting for the Neshaminy Creek plan. The written public comments will be accepted until May 31st for the Skipback plan and until June 13th for the Neshaminy Creek plan. So after those public comment periods are over, and assuming that everybody's signed on to the plans from all the different municipalities, that any comments would be addressed, they'd be incorporated into the plans, and the plans would get submitted to DEP along with the agreement. And then at some point, probably within the next several months, DEP would issue the 5-year permit for each of the 5 municipalities, hopefully at the same time, so we're in a good timing. And then we have 5 years to complete all of the BMPs that are in the plan. Happy to answer any questions. Yes. No, there's no change to the water flow. What we would be doing for stream restoration. Yeah, but these projects that we're proposing don't increase the water flow. They would try to stabilize the streams where they've become eroded over time because of the increased water flow. Try to keep less sediment from moving downstream. We're trying to make it better, but this doesn't address volume. These plans are supposed to address water quality, not volume. Yeah. Well, it's a requirement. It's required by the EPA and the DEP that we have to do this. So.
Restoration. It sounds pretty sexy, but what exactly is it?
Well, generally, it's you find an area that has eroded banks, and you're not allowed to do like gabions or something like that. They don't want a structural thing, so we look for areas where we can cut back the banks, flatten it out a little bit, make it less likely to erode and to do a riparian buffer on both sides.
So you mind if removing earth doesn't erode away? So you're not putting any concrete barriers, no riprap or anything like
Yeah,
that?
they don't want any hard structure in the stream, so.
You gotta be planting seed as well? That's just gonna wash away, right?
Oh, yeah, I mean, seeds and sometimes those willow twigs and other things to stabilize the banks. It takes a little while for that all to happen. Obviously, you'd have some sort of matting down there until you could get the vegetation established.
And that, when you say basins are being used to slow the basins, naturalized basins?
The naturalized basins, like the ones we chose, probably don't hold back. We're trying to hold back the smaller storms. So when you put the naturalized bottom, the water doesn't rush right through and rush right out the other side. If there's a concrete channel, and I don't recall whether those had it or not, you would remove that, put a flat bottom, so the water, when the water comes in, it has time to infiltrate before it goes out.
Talking sediment going downstream, or
Sediment and nutrients, they're concerned about.
if we're dropping sediment in those basins have to be cleared out every now and again?
Yeah, it takes a while for that to be necessary.
Remember this conversation, because the modeling, 5 years ago, the modeling saved us 28%.
Well, it's an updated model that's more sophisticated than it was back in 2000 when it was originally modeled by the EPA.
Is that through measuring actual stream conditions, or just someone's model?
Well, you have better topography, you have better land use information. So, I mean, it's probably not going out and actually measuring individual streams, but it's better input, and then the technology of the modeling has greatly improved. Yeah, yeah. Well, and they don't even look for you to do like sampling afterwards to show that you've done it. I mean, there's a calculation we've done to show what the sediment reduction would be. DEP accepts that, so if we put the BMP in, then they'll say, okay, you're credited for that amount of sediment.
Funding-wise, is that funded by township taxpayers alone?
Well, it normally is, Commissioner, but now that we have a partnership for the Skippack watershed, it will be shared between 5 municipalities, and we think the partnership will also put us in a better position to apply for grant funding as an intergovernmental application. The Neshaminy is certainly, we're on our own for that one, but we have received over the years the Downing Basin and the Stewart Basin were both converted with a grant. I think we had about 48 discussions in here at least about those basins. And actually tonight's, I'm glad Mary's here because it reminds us of why we had to do those things. Trying to explain that to the residents, but the neighbors certainly aren't thrilled with the change from mowed lawn to a naturalized look. And Rick, just so you know too, this is different than, this isn't to address the flooding, right? We've talked about that. Obviously we're seeking funding to acquire your property. Totally separate project, totally separate requirement. We have the FEMA application in to acquire your property. Then we also have another application in to do a stormwater study throughout the town to address ways that we can reduce flooding. Different than why Mary is here tonight. Mary is here to meet a DEP requirement to reduce sediment getting into streams.
You can.
This project here will not be really noticeable, to be honest. We're going to take a few basins and we're going to, instead of mowing them, we're going to let them grow. We're going to reduce sediment and we're going to restore some stream banks. That's our requirement by DEP over the next 5-year cycle. This will do nothing regarding your flooding problem. Agreed. Totally separate topic.
But it's also not intended to do that either.
Correct. By Produce Junction. where the choke. No, I understand thoroughly. I understand your concerns as well as anyone. This is just a totally different project. That doesn't mean we're putting that on the shelf. That's still, it's running concurrently. I don't think this will affect that.
Just a reduction of phosphorus and nutrients in the water stream as opposed to the volume of it at all. So it really shouldn't, unless you tell me otherwise, it shouldn't have any effect. This is merely to meet a state mandate that we have to reduce phosphorus and nutrients in the water. What's that?
There's
Percentages of reduction, yes.
There's requirements set forth by PennDOT, or by DEP. We can't shrug our shoulders and say that your requirements are nonsense. I mean, we have to comply, which we will do, but we are also actively and aggressively seeking solutions to your problems as well at the same time. I understand. Yep.
Sure. Any other questions, comments for Mary? Yes, Mary, this is on our agenda for action tonight. Thank you for coming. Okay, well, we're going to move on to our action items. We have actually 5. One of them has been tabled to our next meeting, I believe. So the first one is Resolution 22-08. Is there a motion for approval with regard to the Mannheim Auto Auction 3212 Berge Road land development? Motion by Commissioner Andrus.
Second.
Second by Vice President Rogers. Ken, do you have this one?
I do. Thank you. Mannheim, you may recall, was discussed at the workshop on April 13th. The project is fairly straightforward, but there was an issue with the tree replacement and the appropriate fee in lieu of the tree replacement. Since the 13th of April, our township landscape architect has reviewed a plan prepared by an arborist hired by the developer. The arborist plan was reviewed, and there was a meeting held out at the site between the arborist and our landscape architect. The final resolution was for the applicant to pay a contribution of $47,950 toward tree replacement. The applicant has agreed to do that, has signed the resolution, which includes that along with all of the other requirements of approval that we discussed on April 13th. So at this point, the resolution is ready for you, for the board to act.
And I just recently got this question by 2 or 3 different residents. They said, when we get money in lieu of, what happens? What do we do with the money?
It goes into a fund, and we use it for park improvements, we use it for landscaping improvements, we use it for open space. It's all environmentally related improvements.
And that's what they really wanted to know, was whether it was environmentally related, with planting of trees
We're
and
not
whatnot.
we're not paving roads with it.
And that's exactly, that's the question, that was the next question I got, was are you using it to pave roads? Thank you for that clarity.
You're welcome.
All right, any questions or comments? Unless there are any, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of Resolution 22-08, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. Next, Resolution 22-09. Is there a motion for approval with regard to the Prime Car Wash at 1250 Bethlehem Pike land development? Motion by Vice President Rogers.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Andrus. Ken, I think you have this one as well.
Yes, I do. Thank you. The Prime Car Wash was discussed at the May 11th workshop, and this is the very corner of Orvilla Road and Bethlehem Pike. It's a pad site that was always contemplated to be a retail pad. It has been subject of a land development to place a car wash on the property. So there were adjustments to the original land development plan to accommodate the car wash. All of those adjustments have been made, and all of the comments from the workshop meeting have been incorporated into a resolution prepared by the solicitor's office. That resolution has been signed by the applicant and delivered to us this evening, so we have a signed resolution ready for the board to act upon.
Right.
Question about traffic pattern, was that issue resolved, Ken?
That was resolved. Actually, that's been discussed at several levels. It was discussed at the zoning hearing board, also at the planning commission, and we had a brief discussion at the workshop, but the main issues were resolved by the planning commission. Welcome.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of Resolution 22-09, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. Aaron, if am I doing this correctly, item number 3 has been tabled until our next meeting, right?
Correct. End of
Okay.
June, we'll be back on the agenda once a few more details are worked out.
Got it. Action item number 4, Resolution 22-11. Is there a motion for approval with regard to the Clemens Food Group 2700 Clemens Road land development?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Lees.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Zimmerman. Ken, I think you've got this one
I-
and number 6, right?
I do have this one, and I believe this is the last one that I have.
Oh,
so-
okay. I'm
So
sorry.
I'll stop talking after this
No,
one.
that's fine. I just wanted to figure out who had the ball on which ones.
This is another fairly straightforward land development application, very important to the Clemens Food Group, but it is very straightforward. It replaces the existing wastewater pretreatment plant with a brand-new state-of-the-art wastewater pretreatment plant in a location which places it farther away from other residential properties. So it would appear to be a win-win for the residents and the township and Clemens Food Group. We have a resolution prepared by the solicitor's office. It was circulated to the applicant and was delivered to me by Mr. Garrity this evening, signed and ready to go.
Okay. Any questions or comments from residents or commissioners? All right, hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of Resolution 22-11, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none is approved. Thank you for coming out. Item number 5, Resolution 22-12. Is there a motion for approval with regard to the Joint Pollution Reduction Plan and BMP Stormwater Management Activities Intergovernmental Agreement, which Mary described to us earlier?
So moved.
Motion by Vice President Rogers, second by Commissioner Andrus. Any questions or comments on what we heard before? Straightforward and yet pretty technical at the same time, so, okay. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor of Resolution 22-12, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. Last action item, Resolution 22-13. Is there a motion for approval with regard to the Clemens Park grant application for greenways, trails, and rec program?
So moved.
Motion by Vice President Rogers. Second by Commissioner Zimmerman. Aaron, I think you have this one.
Yeah, sure. Briefly, Commissioners, thanks. As you know, and I think the community knows, Commissioners were successful in a grant application for the expansion of Clemens Park from DCNR, which is the Department of Community and Natural Resources, for $250,000 at the end of last year. So we're going through the process to begin expanding the park and adding a lot of great features and amenities that we know the residents are going to like. As with everything right now, the cost of materials and labor, everything's rising, and we want to just make sure that we have enough funding to deliver on what we have promised at Clemens Park. So our strategy is to apply for, this is a $250,000 application to DC, different than our initial application. We think this can supplement the project and help us ensure that everything will be built as planned. So it is in addition to what we've already received.
And roughly, if it's a successful grant, do you have any idea on when we might hear?
Most likely the fall.
Fall of this year.
That's usually a fall-spring cycle. So there is, which we have already secured, as we did the match for the DCNR as well, Commissioner, and that was actually, we used the contributions from landscaping waivers and from other land development applications at the Pulte development on 40 Foot. So all of that, there'll be no taxpayer match toward any of these grants.
All right. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of Resolution 22-13, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. Okay, citizens' comments. Are there any citizens' comments on non-agenda items? Yes, sir. Yes, please. Just give us your name and your address.
My name is Umar Chaudhary. I live at 2058 Maple Avenue, apartment X26. I wanted to know if there was any plans in the works to install EV chargers in any of the locations in the township.
Tell me again, what kind of charges?
EV chargers
Oh,
for
EV
electric
chargers.
cars.
Where would you like them? Just
Yeah,
curious.
I'm not, go ahead.
Want them?
There's a park right back behind the village apartments
Yep.
over there. If in about 2030, they're calling for everyone, 1 out of 3 cars is going to be electric car. And then some of the police stations are also switching their cars to EVs, so police stations as well. If you guys think about that.
I appreciate your feedback. We certainly have talked about it, and we were just wondering where would be the best place to put them for our residents. We didn't think the township building would make sense because people come and go quickly. It's not as long of a, but I think the park makes a lot of sense. I think we can look into that for sure for you.
Yeah, parks, I mean, there's, we have Main Street. There's a lot of locations there as well. People like to walk around. So going to, ice creams and stuff. We don't really have a lot in this area at all, but Lansdale has invested heavily into that. There are multiple locations in Lansdale where they have EV charging stations. They're able to make money off of that as well by charging, like very minimum amounts for the charging. Not to mention it profits the businesses in the area where people are able to, stop at that location. So over here we have 309. It's a heavily trafficked area, and if somebody is going to Allentown, there's no way until all the way to Quakertown for them to stop in to charge. I myself am an EV owner recently, and the adoption is very difficult because we don't have anything in this area. Fortunately, I work in Lansdale, so I'm able to go there and charge. But I know another resident also living in the village apartment also just purchased an EV vehicle, and they have a similar situation as me. We spoke with the village apartments. They don't have any plan in the work for the next 5 years. So because they're a big company and they want to do an integration process for all of their facilities together. But if the township can, I understand we're trying to reduce pollution and we're getting funding from the Mayhem Auto Auction area as well. If we could use that to utilize for EV vehicles, not only is it benefit for, personally me, but also for the residents that are in the stage of switching over. Hatfield Village Apartments is a very big complex area. Yeah, and there are people that are looking into EV adoption even more. Gas pricing touching almost $5 a gallon. So it's one of the things that I was forced to make a decision on. I know other people that are in that situation as well. So, any thoughts, questions?
Yeah, I think there's opportunities there. We should probably reach out to Wawa, Giants, some of the local stations and see if they have any plans of doing that.
From my understanding, Wawa has a contract with Tesla for their supercharging stations. So unless we want to, I don't know how they would feel because there's a supercharger in Montgomeryville already for them. So I think they're trying to integrate more. But going with a third party would be a better option. Like a company like EVgo, ChargePoint. Those are the other options that are available. I was also just, having just a regular outlet at locations would also make it easier as well.
Can do it.
Yeah, we will.
Thank you.
It's a real good suggestion. Thank you for coming out. Other good suggestions? Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I apologize, I missed my window during the Prime Car Wash, but last time, or 2 weeks when I was, Fred Leeds, not a resident here, but I'm with the Prime Car Wash.
Right.
The question was asked last time, I said I would get an answer, and I believe it was from Commissioner Zimmerman, and it was about the
Cycling of the water.
recycling of the water. So it is a indirect, direct answer. And the reason for that is the average is 30% of the water is recycled. But the recycling system will vary anywhere from 0 upwards of 60%. But you have to balance the amount of maintenance and the amount of, I think the technical term is gunk, that gets into the system that needs to be cleaned regularly. So during periods of slightly lower traffic, we would increase the amount of recycling, and then during periods where it's a lot really busy, it would have to be reduced. Otherwise, we'd have to stop traffic flow to get more, to clean out the system. And I'm not a technophile when it comes to that system, but I wanted to get you that answer because I said I would.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else? All right. Not hearing anybody else, then I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
By Commissioner Lees. Nobody else wants to leave? Second by Commissioner Zimmerman. I think you seconded, I'm not sure. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No one opposed, so I guess we all get to leave. Thanks for coming out, folks.